It's BRS360 Thursday, episode 4, and it's time to talk cost. How much does all this cost is likely the number one question people ask me. Reef tanks are expensive, but today we're gonna hone in on what expensive even means at this scale. Maybe even more interesting, why would any sane person make an investment like this? And in today's Talkin' 360, speaking with David Hammontree, the founder of Reef to Reef, and what he put into his dream tank, all that's coming up. Hey, I'm Ryan, your host of BRStv. BRStv is all about fun, successful paths to reef tanks you can be proud of. This is the BRS360, a full circle journey of taking everything that we've learned about reefing, transforming those experiences into a 360-gallon reef tank. One of the biggest challenges with equipment-intensive hobbies is the seemingly bottomless pit of cash that can be dumped into them. Reefing can be an even bigger challenge because as soon as you get all this equipment things down, there's no end to the amount of cash that we spent on corals and fish. No point beating around the bush. Over the next few years, this build is likely going to cost tens of thousands of dollars, hopefully producing a really awesome tank that's fun to watch progress together. Today we're going to see how a build like that can be racked up with an aquarium, why any sane person would do this, and how I'm going to manage a budget for this tank. Not only that, but achieve a dream tank for the 10th of the cost as well. As to why any sane person would do this, I can't claim to be 100% sane, nor can I speak for anyone else, but reef tanks simply fulfill my own personal need for innovation, creativity, and change in a manner that pets and other hobbies don't. A place to put productive energy, watch it flourish in creations that I'm proud to share with those in my life. Well, I didn't understand it in real time. The investments I've made in my tanks have really been investments in what I'd call personal joy, and why those that care about me have always been supportive about what from the outside looks like a pretty darn expensive hobby, and frankly is, but worth it. Because once I identify the passions which bring joy into my life, I'm willing to invest in them. People invest in joy in all kinds of areas: fancier cars, bigger houses, boats, and even other 20-year pets. Reef tanks and pet ownership in general is rarely a financial decision. It's a decision of passion for the animal, and you just make it work as time goes on. For instance, almost no one would add this up, but the AKC estimates that the lifetime cost of dog ownership is 15 grand, with the first year approaching 2 grand. Pets in general are just not the cheapest things we bring into our homes and families, but they bring all kinds of different value. Hopefully that provides a bit of vision into why I love reef tanks and willing to invest in them. I wouldn't be surprised if many of you find yourselves on similar paths. Outside that simple passion for creation, knowledge, challenges, and successes, I've spoken to thousands of reefers where reef tanks have done anything from helping them kick addictions like alcohol or even heroin, a young kid who made it through recovery of a lung transplant planning his tank, teachers who share chemistry or biology with their class through reef tanks, people who trait anxiety, all kinds of different value into people's lives. But if I had to describe it as one single word, I'd say joy. At this point, you're either nodding your head and saying, I'm with him, or saying, this guy's crazy, it's just a fish tank. Where you fall in that spectrum probably dictates the budget that you have for the hobby and how much you're willing to invest in it when you inevitably go grossly over budget. In close relation to that, where you fall in that spectrum has a direct causation to the size of the dream and related budget for achieving it. So all that said, it doesn't have to be a 360-gallon tank or cost a fortune to be a dream tank. I've been realizing my dream since my very first tank 15 years ago. Basically, every tank I've set up since then has been a dream at the time. The nature of dreams is they evolve. People invest in success and often have more flexible resources as time goes on. When I set up that first 90-gallon tank at age 27, it actually exceeded my dreams and ended up being way cooler than I anticipated. And even though it was actually smaller, the same could be said of the 70-gallon Reef-Savvy tank that came years later, and where form started to match function, where the outside of the tank and sump started to match the inside of the tank. The clown harem tank community of a single species, watching them grow up together, develop a natural hierarchy within the tank, packed with bubble tips, was something that I dreamed about. Obviously, the BRS160 was a dream where form matched function again, and even 3 different coral theme tanks, independent but run next to each other in my office, was something that I've been dreaming about since I saw something similar with 3 huge coral type specific tanks lining the walls of a local club member's basement, which was his dream. So while there will be a big investment in the 360, I think it's valuable to note that my first dream tank budget was less than 1/10 of that with 2 grand. That said, I didn't keep an exact tab on this, but I would expect that I spent somewhere between 2 to 3 times that in the first 2 years. Just to give you context, I was 27 years old and had a good job as a career server at a local steakhouse, but that $2,000 budget was not a trivial amount of money. Having it double or triple that budget was not planned for, but again, I believe we all invest in things that bring us joy, fun challenges, or accomplishments that we can be proud of. Okay, so before I get to how I'm gonna actually fund this, which I think many of you actually may identify with, what's gonna make this cost so much? I think I'll break this up into infrastructure, equipment, and livestock and fish, or coral and pets themselves. So this isn't my first rodeo, I'm not in a hurry, and some of this I'm just gonna try to do right from the beginning this time. This time I'm gonna take out the carpet around the tank and replace it with tile. Spills are inevitable for me, and I'm just gonna own it from the beginning. This means the fish room plumbing, the floor drain, as well as coating the cement to protect the cement. Also means power solutions, meaning having an electrician put in enough circuits to power a large tank like this. Related to that, the tank also needs a power outage solution. I'm also going to have to do some structural work to the wall, as well as move some HVAC around to accommodate where the tank is going. There's probably going to be a slew of other surprises as well, just getting the area ready. There's also, of course, the tank itself, stand, hood, lighting, sump, pumps, heaters, rockwork, skimmer, flow, and other elements of filtration. And lastly, this is a big tank and there'll be a lot of coral and fish. This time I'm going to take it a bit slower and treat the tank more like a collection of coral and fish. I mean, I don't need an instant tank. I'm looking forward to collecting the right corals that pique my interest over many years. They don't have to be expensive, just the things that I'm excited about caring for and watching grow over many years. So how's a tank like this going to be funded? Well, I think some of you might find this interesting. Many of the tanks you've watched here were actually funded by BRS. However, in this case, the tank is going in my home, and while I know that he wouldn't have an issue with it, I don't think it's fair to have my business partner pay for a dream tank and infrastructure that's going into my house, so it's going to come out of my family's pocket. As you might expect, that's not what my wife would call good news, because I tend to get carried away with things when I have no predetermined boundaries. In the end, I came up with a compromise, which is a tank can be funded with my side hustle, something I think is both fair for our family, keeps me in check a bit, and honestly something I'm excited about because that's how almost all of the tanks in my house were funded from the beginning. Side hustles in reefing are pretty common. That may mean growing out coral and trading them so you don't have to buy them, selling coral frags to a local fish store on eBay or forums like Reef to Reef. This is a hobby that after a while can fund itself. In my case, making homemade fish food for the local club was a big part of what funded that first 90-gallon tank. Ultimately, you expanded to eBay and what would become Reef Chili. If you watched last week, shortly after that I spent thousands of dollars building out a series of coral and fish propagation systems in my basement just a couple years after starting my first tank. That amounted to half a year's salary for me and not something just I had laying around. It was completely funded by the success of the various side hustles. You can call it a side hustle, but really those things were just fun extensions of the hobby and ways to interact with the larger reefing community for me. So I'm going to stick to my roots and agreed with my wife to live within that box of the constraints of what funded my very first tank is also what's going to be funds my dream tank 15 years later with Reef Chili. It's a good time to thank everyone who's been using Reef Chili for the last decade plus. Reef Chili is not just something that I'm proud to offer the community all these years, but also obviously an integral component of my reefing journey in so many ways. That side gig combined with hopefully some timely donations from various vendors will hopefully allow me to put together something really cool for all of you to follow along with. So that leads us right into what's next. And in just a few minutes, David Hammontree, aka The Rev, or founder of the best reefing forum out there with Reef to Reef, will be with us. I invited him because recently he set up his dream tank, and I thought it'd be great to hear about his dream, some insight into what it cost him, and how he managed those costs as well. So that's coming up here in just 30 minutes at 12:30 Central today. So click this link here to join us for that live, raw, in-depth conversation. If you want to see what inspires the leader of one of the most influential communities in reefing, this is your chance. Click this link and we'll see you there.